The 800-mile Arizona Trail starts at the Mexico border in southeast Arizona and traverses the state north, a little bit northwest to the Utah border. And Linda and I and our friends Van and Evan hiked together. Linda and I just doing the first 300 miles north to Superior, with Van and Evan continuing on all the way to Utah. And so we started at Montezuma Pass, about a mile and a half from the border. And the first day is just like 8 miles straight uphill, 3,000 feet in elevation gain. And we're a little pretty nervous about that because, you know, coming from Montana, we've been in the winter, we hadn't really been out exercising, getting in shape for this. We put our packs on, started climbing, but boy, the scenery was amazing. And we did it. We climbed that mountain.
Yes, we did, and the views were so rewarding. As you say, we're really moving from the forest floor to up mountains above 9,000 feet. And that first day we did encounter some snow, but it was easy to get past it. And Tom was wearing sandals he got at a secondhand store, and I was amazed at how well he did hiking in those sandals.
Our first day took us up to Bathtub Spring, and that was a beautiful spot. We camped nearby there. A little bit chilly on top of the mountain for sure, but it was a beautiful campsite, and enjoyed cooking by the fire there. And then the next day, we started walking downhill back to the desert. In fact, we walked 16 miles. We didn't know we were even capable of walking 16 miles. But yeah, the scenery was just spectacular and kept us moving along.
We're really focusing on and learning here in the initial days of how to do this thing, which is to keep water front of mind. So we were trying to end our day close to a water source and to ensure that we were carrying enough water to get to the next watering hole. So the Arizona Trail is all about water and making sure that you're drinking enough. We tried to drink about 1 liter every 5 miles, depending on the difficulty of the terrain and also the heat.
Mm-hmm. You know, the Far Out app for the Arizona Trail is just amazing because it just tells you exactly where you are, how far you have to go to each trail junction or water source, any gate or significant point along the way, and makes navigation just super easy and easy to plan out. You know, how far do you need to go to get to that next water source?
And these days, there's wonderful ultralight gear, which really made it possible for us to tackle this trail without much preparation at all. Our tent, for example, only weighed 1 pound, 1 ounce and was supported by trekking poles. So our ultralight gear was comfortable. We were carrying 20 to 25 pounds, and that made it possible for us to do this thing. One of the funny things about a trail like this is people are assigned names, trail names. Van's trail name was Chickadee. She named herself Chickadee because she says she talks a lot. And she gave Evan the trail name of Cruz because Evan hiked about half the time as the rest of us, but he covered the same distance.
And Linda and I started out without trail names for a good chunk of the trail until some folks that we met named us the Professor and Mary Ann from Gilligan's Island, a show from the 70s that anyone of our generation would recognize.
We're in the Canelo Hills here, headed towards Patagonia, and we are getting water from cow tanks and troughs and filtering that water with Sawyer filters.
Yeah, the Canelo Hills, beautiful scenery here. It's fairly low in elevation, so a lot more desert-like, and still very early in spring. That the grass hasn't even greened up at this point, and yeah, fairly warm out. The Mexican pinyon pine, it was fun to see those.
This hike was my first introduction to desert ecology.
It was such a beautiful landscape out there. I loved the agaves and the sotol everywhere and the sumac that grows in the desert. And the cows were always a little surprising. I mean, it's like there's just a few scattered cows, and they're staying in one place way too long. And they really don't look like happy cows out there in the thorny landscape. Just it seems like a torturous place to be a cow, but somehow they manage. We were blessed with some cloudy, cooler weather here, which is really great. This is one of our hottest days on the trail so far. And really interesting that even though it's hot out, the trees are mostly still dormant and kind of dead looking. They like to wait till it's consistently 80 degrees before they leaf out. But stunning, beautiful landscape there. So at this point, we're hiking towards our first town, Patagonia, where we'll have a layover, actually a couple of nights in town to recoup and prepare for the next section. So we did a 4-mile hike in on the highway where we were accompanied by some longhorn cows just trotting down the road.
Yes, Patagonia, where we indulged our hiker hunger and thirst. After all that hiking, you really feel like you can eat whatever you want. We had a wonderful day off in Patagonia, a 0 day, where we didn't do any miles. We just enjoyed the town. And then the next morning, we headed out on a 7-mile gravel road walk to the trailhead that leads into the Santa Rita Mountains.
Mm. You know, everybody has a different pace on a trip like this. Linda and I are really well matched as far as we get up at the same time, we walk about the same pace. Whereas I know like Cruz, he tended to sleep in, but he also walked really fast and would just pass us up later in the day. Chickadee had a slower pace but more steady, and you know, if we stopped to take a break, she'd just kind of walk right on by us. And so we were all on our own schedule, hiking at our own paces, even camping in different places, yet we were together moving down the trail.
Climbing up Mount Wrightson was very rewarding, quite steep, and certainly a bit of a workout. When we got over the other side, though, we enjoyed Bear Spring, which had beautiful sweet water in the creek, and were able to soak our feet and have a lovely evening camping there.
From Bear Spring, we were hiking back down into the desert, but really contouring along around the side of the hills on the bed of an old ditch that was actually made to channel water from the source here to an old mining operation. Big, expensive endeavor that had ultimately failed, and the site was turned into a ranch. But it had some beautiful adobe buildings that some for the original ranch or for the original mine, and then the house for the ranch there is now part of the National Forest, a beautiful campground, and it was fun to stop by and check that out.
Mm-hmm. The restoration work they're doing there was very impressive.
I've been working on an ecology book, so it was I was just really cued into the life zones, the changing vegetation as we went up and down in elevation. And it was really surprising just to walk by a cow out there munching on prickly pear cactus like it was a salad bar. I mean, we were wondering, well, what do the cows eat out here? And I guess that's it.
So we came upon 100 miles in good company. We met a lovely young man, TJ, from Canada, who is a bus driver there and works for 6 months and hikes for 6 months. He was lovely to travel with. And then it was time for resupply back in Tucson. We spent a couple of nights in Tucson adjusting gear and collecting our resupply packages that we had mailed to ourselves, and then embarked on an 8-day section of trail beginning at the Gabe Zimmerman Trailhead.
We were super fortunate to hit the weather just right, where we had the warmest weather when we were up high in the mountains and the coolest weather when we were down in the desert with cactus. And it was really exciting, especially coming from Montana, to spend some time hiking through the Saguaros. And indeed, this section we're actually hiking into is like the eastern unit of Saguaro National Park. And I just couldn't stop taking pictures as we're walking through all the saguaro cactus and the ocotillo and everything. Was really spectacular.
I love your enthusiasm, Tom. The trail led us up into Mount Mica next, which posed a very interesting set of challenges because there were a lot of stairs all the way up for miles and miles and miles, which was better than nothing, really controlling erosion. We very much appreciated all the labor that went into building that whole section of trail. So we're climbing up, we're getting back into the high country and noticing some signs of cooler weather. Tom's eating a green belly bar, which has 650 calories, which he liked to cover with peanut butter.
Well, maybe that's why I didn't lose as much weight as I'd hoped to on this trip. We definitely ate well. So we climbed Mount Mica back up to the snow level, and then the trail just immediately dives off the other side in this crazy long descent back down to the desert. It's the trail itself is really good, just winding back and forth, but it just goes down and down and down, and it's like the desert is just way down below you, and you're just marching down the trail to it.
This descent on the other side of Mount Mica was strikingly beautiful, with very interesting rock formations and a little bit of a difficult trail coming down. We were running low on water and learned a big lesson about never passing up water that's coming from a clear flowing source.
Yeah, we bypassed this beautiful spot and then continued on to the Italian trap tank. Tank is a word that they use on the Arizona Trail for just like a cattle pond, a mucky cow manure water that we had to filter, and took us a while to get there and to find it because it wasn't right on the trail. So we're really walking into the emergence of springtime, both the factor of going down in elevation, but also just that we're moving into mid-March and the grass is starting to green up, flowers beginning to pop out, and that's really exciting to me to just start to see the desert come alive.
Tom was very sweet when he exclaimed one day that the problem that he was having was that every flower was just begging to be photographed.
Hey, look, that agave is starting to send up a flower stalk. And check this out, it's some kind of a buttercup. And look, the ocotillo is leafing out.
The ocotillo is able to photosynthesize even without leaves. This section of trail was quite steep, as you see, and but really gave us some beautiful views. There's some verbena, and the professor and the sheik forgot my hat, so was using a bandana. And when we got up and over this section, we came into Molino Basin Campground, where we spent the night and prepared to climb Mount Lemon.
So our first day out of Molino Basin Campground was a 15-mile hike where we're going up and down with a total net gain of 1,700 feet in elevation for the day. And the first part was dry, but actually got into some nice water later up in the mountains. And I know my pictures make it seem like there's water everywhere because I always end up taking more photos of the water. It's just so beautiful when you encounter it. Hutch's Pool is actually a big one where you can jump in and go for a swim. From Hutch's Pool, it was really a long, hot climb up the mountain. And I totally soaked my clothing before leaving the water. But it really didn't take but an hour to dry off, and so found another little pool, cooling off again, just wherever we could cool off for the climb up the mountain there.
When we finally got to the top of Romero Pass, it was very steep on either side. We had a small little patch where we could pitch our tent, and we were very lucky that it was not windy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we stayed overnight there and then started the ascent of Mount Lemon in the morning. And that was incredibly steep, challenging climb, and doing it with very little water, just trying to kind of stretch our water to get to our next water source.
We enjoyed following the cairns on this trail and coming into beautiful conifer forest that was really magical to bump into.
We rested and resupplied in Oracle, and then I hit the trail again for Kearney. And before we even got to the trailhead, my sandal broke, so had to stop and stitch that back together. Thanks to some supplies and preparedness with our Boy Scout cruise.
The next 2 days on trail were beautiful, pretty flat and easy, which was nice after climbing those 2 mountains.
Spring was in full force with flowers popping out left and right along the trail, and just constantly impressed with the infrastructure, just the care and love that goes into the gates and the signage on the Arizona Trail. There's some javelina scat. Javelinas look a lot like pigs but are not closely related. We actually ran into a squadron of those in the dark way back in Patagonia.
In this wide open expanse, we enjoyed the changing colors of the earth underfoot: purple, even brown, white, yellow, orange, and red.
Water sources are few and far between in this country, but we camped at Mountain View Water Tank, where there's thousands of gallons were piped in and stored for livestock use. Shade is also at a premium out in here, but we were blessed with a cloudy day with an approaching storm front that gave us some cover from the hot desert sun.
We kept coming upon these interesting sheet-like spider webs with a very distinct roundness in the middle, and we learned that those are funnel web spiders with that central hole there for retreat.
Sometimes I feel like the saguaro cacti are like sentient beings that watch over the desert. And here is some ephedra, otherwise known as Mormon tea. There's a close-up look at the blossoms on that.
We are hiking now towards the town of Kearney, and we are moving from watering hole to watering hole.
Yeah, we enjoyed a nice lunch in the shade at the Cowhead Tank. And then, trucked out across the desert through what turned into kind of a cholla forest. Love the cane chollas. You wouldn't really want to get off the trail out in those. And then we took refuge in our tent briefly during a passing storm.
That storm was wonderful. We saw it coming. It was very cooling, and it was a wonderful break. All along the Arizona Trail, there are caches of water that are placed in these boxes by trail angels for private individuals and also for the public. And hiking to these water caches really saved us on several occasions.
Another type of water source is a rainwater collection system that uses a big roof to channel water off into underground storage tanks that then feed a little slimy green pool where the wildlife can collect water, in this case us, that can be filtered for use on the trail.
In this section of the trail, we started to come upon beautiful flowering yucca, and the further we got down the trail, the more expressive the blooms became. It was very astounding to see. On the trail, one of the things you have to be very mindful of is your feet. And I did have some foot issues from prior hikes that plagued me a little bit at this stage in the hike. I feel like my shoe cushioning ran out and then my feet kind of ran out. So when you stop to rest, it's good to air out your feet and give yourself a little massage and carry on.
We made it down to the Gila River and then caught a ride with Trail Angel into town and spent the night there in Kearney and then hit the trail again the next morning. And we were able to parallel the Gila River for quite a ways. And that was just spectacular with all the flowers and then seeing a bit of the riparian area.
We came upon a Gila monster in this section, very exciting, and did quite a bit of grazing on wolfberries or goji berries.
The creosote bushes were in full bloom through here, and most of the time we were walking through the saguaro cacti, but occasionally the trail would loop down through the mesquite bottomland. And one morning we got up at 4:30 to beat the heat, and that was beautiful.
This is copper country, and here's an image of some natural copper ore.
We spent days hiking past the Asarco Ray copper mine, and really gave us pause to wonder what that was doing to the environment or what we might be drinking in the water here. The final 2 days of our section hike to Superior was some of the most arid landscape that we'd been in, but also perhaps the most beautiful part of the Arizona Trail that we'd walked in this time, and the saguaros here were denser than anywhere else that we'd been. It was just really truly a saguaro forest, and that was amazing, and the flowers were just in full bloom everywhere here.
This was also some of the hottest weather we'd had on our hike, with temperatures peaking out at 90 and 95 for those last 2 days on the trail.
I carried extra water up from the Gila River, partly just to dump on my head a little bit at a time for additional cooling that seemed to be more effective from the outside than the inside. The flowers here were just mind-blowingly beautiful, and this was a really rugged terrain hiking over this mountain. Not a whole lot of shade here, but absolutely gorgeous. Where we did find shady nooks along the trail is full of this hyper green, wet vegetation. It was such a contrast with the rest of the desert.
It was a privilege to hike these first 300 miles of the Arizona Trail, and I'm so grateful to all the volunteer work that goes into maintaining this beautiful trail.
And the Arizona Trail Association even raised funds to install this rainwater collection system that stores rainwater from the rainy season over for hikers to come through in the dry season. And grateful to all the trail angels that are out there helping out everybody. We are sending a donation to the Arizona Trail Association to support their work on this beautiful trail. And I hope to see you out on the trail for our next adventure.